Welcome back to another episode of Opal Wave MTG, a channel dedicated to exploring power levels in EDH and helping you tune your deck to your meta. I'm your host Jacob, and today we're going to be looking at Jan Jansen Chaos Crafter, which is a super sweet Mardu, meaning red, white, and black creature from Battle for Baldur's Gate. It is a gnome artificer with haste. Tap, sacrifice an artifact creature, create 2 treasure tokens. Tap, sacrifice a non-creature artifact, create 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens. And it is a 3/3, so not bad for 3 mana. And there's a lot of different things you could have done with this commander, whether you want to go full-on aristocrat like I did, a little bit more straightforward of a build, or you could do like construct tribal, which would be super interesting to do. Let me know what you did in the comments below. And if you want to support my channel, be sure to check out my Fiverr in the description below. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So for the Skirmish version of Jan Jansen, I pretty much wanted to do a synergy type build with a little bit of aristocrat sacrifice shenanigans that you can do with a sacrifice outlet in the command zone, which is pretty sweet. So obviously we're going to throw in this Academy Manufacturer. It's just pretty insane. For every 1 treasure you make, you're going to be making a clue and a food as well. And since we're making 2 treasures with that ability, it's kind of just disgusting once you get this thing out. Another notable include is this drum bellower from the precon from the previous set, Neon Dynasty. It's just got untap all creatures you control during each other player's untap step. Super sweet in this deck, since we can essentially just go back and forth between sacrificing an artifact creature and sacrificing a non-creature artifact to just keep making more and more and more. We'll do that over and over and over again. Get some payoffs like Marionette Master or Ingenious Artillerist. We've got a few other creatures that can synergize with Drum Bellower as well, like Fane, the Broker, and the Ingenious Artillerist, as well as the Hangerback Walker, all have a tap ability that we can potentially use. But since we have it in the command zone, it's pretty much guaranteed to be, worth something when you draw it. More ways for us to make artifact tokens, like the Dig Site Engineer. Breya's Apprentice can use the tokens that Jan is making for value. Ruthless Knave, another treasure outlet. We can sacrifice 3 treasures to draw a card, which is pretty sweet. And a Zorn. So when we make those treasures, we will make an additional treasure. So they're pretty sweet. We've also got a few other, kind of synergy type creatures, but nothing too crazy going on here. Moving on to the sorceries, we've got this new Seize the Spotlight card. I think this card's pretty sweet. So for each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. For each player who chooses Fame, you gain the creature, and if you choose Fortune, you get to draw a card and make a treasure token, which is pretty sweet. You're going to gain some sweet creature your opponent has, or you're going to be drawing cards and get mana. So it's not a great situation for your opponents to be in. Vanquish the Horde and Wrath of God as our board wipe cards. Instant package is pretty straightforward, just some pretty decent removal. Again, I like this Wild Magic Surge card. We are in 3 colors, for there's really not that much of a need to be running this, considering we have white has really great removal for the non-creature stuff, and then the black spells are really good for destroying the creatures that we want to destroy. So we don't really need this, but since we are in like that lower power level, things like Chaos Warp and Wild Magic Surge have good utility in the fact that they can hit any permanent. But as we move up power level, we probably want to not run these cards that can give our opponents value potentially. Moving on to the artifacts is where a lot of our spice is going to be happening. Altar of Ball, this card's super sweet. I like this card a lot. You can sacrifice the creature tokens that you make with Jan Jansen, and then you can just continue to reanimate creatures in your graveyard. And they don't even leave the battlefield at the end of turn either. The sorcery is not that great, but as a 2 mana artifact, that's pretty sweet. Experimental Synthesizer, stuff like the Nimble Right schematic, to where when they enter you get some value, when they leave you get some value. These spell bombs, you can pay an extra mana when you sacrifice the spell bombs to get some extra card draw. And Dispeller's Capsule, and Executioner's Capsule. Just extra removal, and if we don't really need it, we can just sacrifice it to Jan Jansen to get our artifacts, tokens, like our that game plan going. So it's not bad if we draw it early either, and or don't need it. Soul Guard Lantern, kind of in the same boat as our capsules, where we can use them as removal, but in a pinch, you know, if we want to really get going with Jan Jansen early, we can cast it for early and just start getting value out of it, or just sack it and draw a card. So good utility all around. Trading post, so we can recur a lot of our artifacts. And I thought this nuisance engine was a pretty sweet card too. Basically just pay 2, make a colorless pest artifact, which then you can turn into 2 treasures. So not bad. Moving on to the enchantments, I thought adding this Agent of the Iron Throne would be a pretty cool include. So it's basically going to give Jan Jansen, whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each player loses a life. So either you're sacrificing your treasures to make constructs, or you're sacrificing your constructs to make treasures, or even when you just sacrifice treasures, you are going to, you know, your opponents are going to start losing life. So it's pretty sweet. Hidden Stockpile has that revolt mechanic. Since we're going to be sacrificing a creature with Jan Jansen, it's pretty sweet. We'll be able to get it at, you know, we'll be able to make a colorless servo at the end of our end step, and then we can use that to make more treasure. And it also has a sack ability on it, where we can sack our creature to scry 1. Prosperous Partnership. I like this card. It's new. And I mean, I don't think it's like amazing per se, but still pretty cool. We have the again, we do have this Drum Bellower out, which can, you know, potentially make us a good amount of treasure. Then we've got the Street Urchin, where our commander again gains this ability, sacrifice an artifact or a creature to deal 1 damage to any target. So just another way to make Jan Jansen, you know, get some more utility. We can use it to remove creatures or just ping players if we need to. Birth of Meletis gets us a land, but it also is going to get us an artifact creature that we can sacrifice to Jan Jansen. So I thought it was a cool include. And a Vampiric Rite, where we can turn our creatures into a card draw, kind of like the Skull Clamp, just a little bit more mana intensive. And in the lands, as usual, we got lands that are entering tapped. We got a few lands that can enter untapped. The big in this deck are the artifact lands like Ancient Den, Vault of Whispers, Great Furnace, and I generally don't advocate for people to run these lands just because they get hit by random board wipes like a Vandal Blast or a Bane of Progress, Cleansing Nova. You're going to lose these lands just because they're artifacts. It is nice if you can get some synergy out of them, at least in this context. You know, we can sacrifice the land to Jan Jansen to make, you know, the dudes and get our chain going if we really need to. But you know, it's kind of a meta thing. If you know that your opponents run a lot of Vandal Blasts or, you know, non-creature board wipe type stuff, I would recommend just not even running these. This is like one of the lower power levels, so I included a little bit more than I definitely normally would. I also added the dual colors. That one's not one, but this one's one. So yeah, definitely a meta thing. But generally, as you're moving up in power levels, you want to see less of these lands. For the battle version of Jan Jansen, we kind of turned it into a combo ball deck, and I was having a hard time describing these combos, so I wanted to go into the playtest simulator and kind of go over the interactions that we're going for. So our main combo is going to involve turning Jan Jansen into an artifact creature with either liquid metal coating or liquid metal torque. So these can both make a a permanent, if you use the coating, into an artifact. So we'll turn Jan Jansen into artifact. Then we have Voltaic Construct, which has pay 2 untap target artifact creature, and Dross Scorpion. So whenever it or another artifact creature is put into a graveyard, you may untap target artifact. And then we have Thornbite Staff, which has the creature that it is equipped to has, whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap this creature. So we're going to use a combination of any combination of 2 of these to potentially go infinite. So let's say we turn our Jan Jansen into an artifact creature, and we now have a Thornbite Staff equipped to him and a Draw Scorpion on the battlefield. You need a few treasures and or constructs to get this combo going. So let's assume we got 2 treasures and two constructs that we have here. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap Jan Jansen, and we're going to sacrifice a construct. We now have 2 triggers on the stack to untap Jan Jansen. And neither of these, or the ability of Jan Jansen, will not resolve until after these triggered abilities happen. Because you are activating Jan Jansen first to put the ability on the stack, and because it has a cost, the triggers go on top of it. And so because the stack resolves top down, you now have 2 untapped triggers to resolve before the ability itself actually resolves. So we've sacrificed our construct. We have an ability on the stack to make 2 treasures. We now have 2 untapped triggers. So what we're going to do is we're going to untap our Jan Jansen. We're going to tap him again in response to the second untapped trigger. And we're going to sacrifice a treasure, and we're going to make 2 constructs. Then the next untapped trigger will happen. We'll let that resolve. And now we're going to let our original Jan Jansen ability resolve, creating 2 treasures. From here, we can do the same thing. When we tap, sacrifice a construct, we now have 2 triggers on the stack, and just keep stacking those on top of each other. We'll get a bunch of treasures. We'll go back and forth. And this can also do more or less the same thing with the voltaic construct. So let's put one of these out and put the voltaic construct in. We'll go with our original scenario where we have 2 treasures and 2 constructs. So we're going to turn our Jan Jansen into an artifact creature, and we are going to sack a construct to make 2 treasures, and we are going to get a free untap on our draw scorpion. So we're going to untap here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and let this ability resolve. So we're going to make another treasure. Then we're going to sacrifice a construct. We'll get another free untap, and we'll make 2 more treasures. From here, we'll tap Jan Jansen to make 2 constructs, and then we can pay 2 to untap, sacrifice construct, make 2 more treasure, untap here, do it again, make 2 more treasures, then sacrifice, make 2 constructs, then we can sacrifice 2 more treasures to untap. Then we can sacrifice to make 2 treasure. We get a free untap, sacrifice to get a treasure. So from here, we will proceed to make infinite treasures. We can also do this with Anointed Procession in place of one of these untapper dudes. So basically, we're going to turn Jan Jansen to an artifact creature again. Running out of space with all these extra tokens. So same scenario, we got 2 constructs, 2 whatevers. Alright, so now we're going to sacrifice Jan Jansen, sacrifice a construct, and we're going to make 2 constructs, and that's going to get doubled to treasures. So now we get to make 4 treasure. And then from there, we can untap Jan Jansen. We can sacrifice sacrifice a construct to make 4 more treasures, and pay 2 treasures to untap Jan Jansen, sacrifice a treasure, and now we get to make 4 constructs. From there, we can sacrifice 2 more treasures to untap Jan Jansen again, and then we can sacrifice to make 4 treasures. We'll use 2 of them to untap Jan Jansen. So basically every construct is going to generate 2 mana for us. And then from there, we will get 2 more treasures. And then we can do it one more time So we'll sacrifice there, and we'll actually go +4 treasures. Probably be better if I use like a token type thing, or maybe a counter type thing to keep track of all this. So then from here, you can sacrifice 2 treasures to untap Jan Jansen, sacrifice this one to make 4 more constructs, and then you just loop this over and over again until you have infinite treasures and infinite dudes. And then we'll go over some of the outlets that we have in the deck a little bit later on. This can also function if you have a combination of 2 of these out, like a Zorn of Pitiless Splendor or a Goldspan Dragon, to help pay for the construct's ability cost. But yeah, the combos are a little convoluted, and that's why I wanted to go into the playtest simulator to kind of go over some of those. So we've got some planeswalkers. We added both Durettis. I think they're both pretty sweet in this deck. We can use the minus on the Duretti to sacrifice some of the tokens we make with Jan Jansen to reanimate stuff, and Duretti can use those tokens to destroy things. We've got the Academy Manufacturer, which can be an outlet. Making all those treasures, we're going to be making clues as well. So we use that infinite mana to draw out our deck, and then we can, you know, use like a Mayhem Devil or a Marionette Master to actually end the game. Got Goblin Welder, Goblin Engineer. Both of these are sweet to utilize the creatures or tokens we're making to get some of our other stuff back. Casket can also sacrifice artifacts to generate card advantage, which is super sweet. And a Meteor Golem. We can do some pretty crazy stuff with Goblin Welder. Just kind of recurring that Meteor Golem every turn is kind of nuts. In the sorceries, we've got Vanquish the Horde and the Blasphemous Act, and some tutors like Demonic Tutor and the Grim Tutor, as well as a Trash for Treasure, another way for us to reanimate some artifacts in our graveyard. Pretty easy. In the instance, we have upgraded just a little bit. We've added a Dispatch. This card's actually pretty sweet in this deck. We'll more than likely be able to trigger Metalcraft, so it is a second Swords to Plowshares in the context of this deck. Plumb the Forbidden. I like this card a lot. Can potentially draw a bunch of cards, a Boros Charm, and a Teferi's Protection to protect our boards, and a Heliod's Intervention. Moving on to the artifacts, we've added a Chromatic Ori. We can potentially cheat this into play with like a Duretti or something like that, so I wanted to add it. It's also some pretty decent card draw, pay 5, draw 3, especially if we get like an Unwinding Clock going, can be kind of nuts. Altar of Ball is again in the deck. I think this card is super sweet, and you know, kind of just fixed up our artifacts a little bit here, reduced some of the run it because it's an artifact type of thing, and put a little bit more focus onto ramping, more utility out of the artifacts that we are playing, and you know how they can combo and help us combo. Winter Orb will be able to play around this effect really easily, and with Jan Jansen we can sacrifice the Winter Orb on, you know, the instap of an opponent's turn, and then we can untap with all of our lands if we really want to, or even do some cool shenanigans with the Goblin Welder, so where we are actually never affected by the stacks piece. So it can be pretty sweet. Wishclaw Talisman is another really important artifact here. So what's important about it is that you generally, when you activate it, you have to give it to a player, but you don't give it to a player until the ability resolves. So when you activate it, in response, you sacrifice it with Jan Jansen. So you are the only person that tutors. And it gets, you know, it's another card that gets kind of crazy when you have the Engineer or the Welder out, where you can sacrifice it and then return it to the battlefield with the tokens that Jan Jansen made off of that Wishclaw Talisman. And you basically just get to tutor for free every turn. So, well, not for free, you still have to pay 1. But tutoring multiple times in a turn is super strong, especially since a lot of our combos are a little convoluted. Moving on to the enchantments, we've got the Anointed Procession. I mean, it's great value, but it's also a combo piece, which is pretty sweet. We've still got the Prosperous Partnership, then a Gear per Aether Grid, so we can start pinging players, and it's an outlet if we can generate infinite treasures and artifacts. And then we've got a Smoke, which no player may untap more than 1 creature during his or her untap phase. we only have one creature that we really want to be untapping every turn, and that is Jan Jansen. So pretty sweet. Another way we have to play around this is with the Drum Bellower. So if we do have like some of our other creatures that care about tapping, you know, we can still play around that effect pretty well. But again, we can play around it really well, since we only need to untap one thing, really. Moving on to the lands, just added some more lands that can enter untapped, some utility stuff like Inventor's Fair, the Treasure Vault. Again, we've still got like the Vault of Whispers, and the Ancient Den. And again, depending on your meta, don't play these cards. I just threw them in because I thought it would be fun. But if you're expecting a lot of those board wipe type cards, the Bane of Progresses and your Vandal Blasts, just don't bother with it, right? It's you'd rather just have a regular land in play than lose access to that mana. Before moving on to the glory version of Jan Jansen, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know what commander you want to see built and what you did with your version of Jan Jansen. I'm super interested to hear what you had to do with it. And with the glory version of Jan Jansen, which is essentially our cEDH version, we've basically just taken that idea and focused it a little bit more, so we don't need as many pieces. Essentially, this kind of came off to me as a Magda type of deck. Magda is going to play really well in assembling our combos, whether it is actually being a combo or an outlet for a combo that we have. So essentially, Mardu Magda. Magda was already a super sweet commander, and this one might be another good one where we can go into the play test here. So we're gonna get our Magda. Oh, Liquid Metal Torque's in our opening hand, so that's cool. So we're gonna grab Magda, and then we're gonna get a card called Clock of Omens. And this combo is a little more straightforward than the other combos, obviously. And this also works with Jan Jansen. So we'll start with Jan Jansen first. And let's just let's give ourselves a construct. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap our Liquid Metal Torque, and we're going to target Jan Jansen. Oops, make it into an artifact. Then we can tap Jan Jansen. We will sacrifice this construct, and we're going to make 2 treasures. Then we can sacrifice, or not sacrifice, we're going to tap our 2 treasures to untap Jan Jansen. And then from here we can tap Jan Jansen to make 2 constructs. Then we're going to tap these to untap Jan Jansen, sacrifice, make 2 more treasures. You see the pattern. We're going to go back and forth until we have an end board state of either Jan Jansen is tapped and you have 2 untapped constructs or 2 untapped treasures, or you have infinite tap treasures and infinite tap constructs with an untapped Jan Jansen. Depending on how you end that combo is going to depend on what you need to be doing next in terms of actually winning from this position. While this does generate infinite treasure and infinite constructs, they are tapped, so it's not actually infinite mana. If you're unfamiliar with the original Magda being the OG here, you turn Magda into an artifact creature. Then you tap Clock of Omens and Magda, targeting Magda. So what happens is Magda's going to untap and you're going to make a treasure. Oops, that's a construct. Treasure. Then you tap the treasure and the Magda to untap Magda. And that makes another treasure because you tapped Magda. Then you can tap that treasure and you see the pattern. Excuse me. From here, Magda can sacrifice treasures to tutor for any artifacts you want, and from here we've got a few outlets. The combo, we have Academy Manufacturer, which can actually let us use the food and the clue to untap Jan Jansen instead, as well as the Magda, so our treasures can remain untapped. And from there we can draw out our deck with the clue tokens, and then we can loop Twin Shot Sniper plus Elixir of Immortality, or we can find Grinding Station and mill out our opponents. Both of those work. Another thing, or more outlets that we have for the deck, are Magda, which can actually just tutor out either the grinding station or the academy manufacturer. We have Mayhem Devil, which we can use, to ping everybody down, whether we're sacrificing the treasures or the constructs with Jan Jansen. And then we have a few other Magda outlets. So we've got the Cloudstone Curio plus Dockside Classic. You make infinite treasures, then you can sacrifice the same aforementioned cards with Magda to then proceed to win the game. You can also use Twin Shot Sniper with Dockside Extortionist to deal infinite damage to the table as well. One of our other combo type cards is Underworld Breach plus Grinding Station plus either the Mox Amber or our Mox Opal. So if you're unfamiliar how this combo works, we will tap our Mox Opal for a mana, tap our Grind Station, targeting ourselves and sacrificing Mox Opal. Then we will escape the Mox Opal with the 3 cards that we just milled from Grinding Station. And every time you do this, you're going to generate a mana of whatever color you make. And you can keep going until you find your other combo pieces, whether that be the Cloudstone Curio type cards, or you can just loop Twin Shot Sniper with the Academy manufacturer combo that we talked about earlier. It gives you a lot of different options. And then we just have a few staples in our creatures like the Drannith Magistrate, Esper Sentinel, Opposition Agent, and Facebreaker is an outlet, but it's also just super strong in our deck, so we're going to use it. Cabal Therapy, we can sacrifice those dudes to rip cards from our opponent's hands. We've added Dam, we can destroy a creature or destroy all creatures. We've upgraded our tutor package just a little bit, got that new Imperial Seal art, which is pretty sweet. A Reanimate in case we need to get an important creature from our graveyard, as well as the Savine's Rack to get back our Underworld Breacher or something if we really need to. We've upgraded the instance, added a Dark Ritual, kind of help us power out those ad nauseums, maybe cast Necropotence with that triple black mana cost. An Entomb so we can start finding things when we get Underworld Breach going. And a Final Fortune so we can kind of steal an extra turn if we really need to. Or we attempt a combo, we get stopped, and if we had another turn, we'd be able to combo on that turn too. Final Fortune can do that for us. Pyroblast and Red Blast to protect our combos. We got Silence and Vampiric Tutor and Lightning Tutor to upgrade our tutoring power. With the artifacts, we've got Bolas' Citadel plus Sensei's Divining Top, which essentially turns into pay 1 mana, draw a card. We can cheat this into play potentially, putting it into our graveyard with Entomb, and then reanimating it with a Goblin Welder potentially. If you really wanted an outlet for this combo, you could add the Aetherflux Reservoir. I didn't think it was needed since we have a few different ways that we can combo, a lot of tutoring power. Once you resolve Bolas' Citadel, it's going to be really hard for you to not win unless you just don't have a lot of life that you can use as a resource. We've added this Curse Mirror, which is a 3 mana rock, but it can come into the battlefield as any creature on the battlefield until the end of turn. So if your opponent has a Dockside, you can do Dockside loops with the Cloudstone if you really wanted to. What's important is that it enters as a copy of that creature, so it is no longer an artifact until the end of turn. So pretty sweet interaction where it's not an artifact anymore. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, we've just upgraded our ramp. We've added a few more, kind of playing on this Winter Orb theme with the Tangle Wire and the Static Orb. Again, we play around these effects super well, and we can also sacrifice them and potentially play around with them in our graveyard, so our opponents will, we will never have to actually be under these effects, and our opponents will have to be under them perpetually, like, under a Tangle Wire or something, which would be pretty backbreaking. Again, we've got that Wishclaw Talisman, which is super potent again in this deck, since we can, tutoring 2 times in a turn potentially is really nasty. So again, we've got that Necropotence, help us find our combo pieces. Meat Hook Massacre is an outlet for the combos that we were talking about, and is also a board wipe. So a lot of really good utility we're going to get out of the Meat Hook Massacre. And yeah, we've got the Underworld Breach as a combo piece. Moving to the lands, All of our lands are entering untapped at this point. We've got a few basics, just in case you want to play around that Blood Moon. Things like Ancient Tomb, added Iganjo. The red channel land doesn't do a lot for us, so I did not add that one. Could potentially, if you wanted another like twin shot out sniper kind of outlet with the Academy manufacturer. So you could do that. And then we've got the Takenuma as a way to kind of just buy back a creature if you really, really need to. And that Urza Saga. Cool thing about Urza Saga is that the constructs, you know, they get +1/+1 for each other artifact you control. Jan Jansen can definitely make a lot of artifacts on his own. So the constructs can potentially, you know, in locked out board states, you can just start beating people down with these. Could be, you know, pretty brutal. So thanks for checking out this episode of Opal Wave MTG. Again, I'm your host, Jacob, and until next time.